Hello and welcome to The Curator on Monocle Radio with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Over the next 60 minutes, we'll be bringing some of the very best interviews and reports from the past week here on Monocle Radio, with highlights from our studios here in Midori House and from around the world. This week we speak with Japanese artist Takashi Murakami.
Every day I am, sitting and making a drawing and choosing for the color. That process I had been over 30 years. I almost bored.
Plus, we hear from Austrian singer Sofie Royer.
I got tired of playing songs on stage that were morbid, and I wanted to do something a little more dauntless and lighthearted, and for me to have more fun when I'm playing live.
All that and much more in the next hour here on The Curator with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. And to start the show, a highlight from The Globalist. Following the ousting of Bashar al-Assad, Syria has a new interim leader. This is just the beginning of the process of rebuilding the country. The caretaker prime minister said he aimed to bring back millions of Syrian refugees, creating unity and providing basic services. But rebuilding would be daunting. What will it take to resurrect the once stunning built environment? One man who knows more about this than most is Amar Azouz, who is a Syrian architect and research fellow at Oxford University.
We waited for this for over half a century. This family has ruled us for over half a century. And it felt like they created this figure of the president who is almost a holy, or who is almost like a god, that it's unbreakable and that it's eternal. When we were teenagers and children at the school, we always used to chant like Ila al-Abad, Ila al-Abad, Ya Hafiz al-Assad, which means forever, forever, Hafiz al-Assad, which is the father of the current falling president. And now everyone's saying, Ma fil al-Abad, Ma fil al-Abad. There is no forever, there is no forever, and it seems like everything is collapsing. I stayed awake on Saturday morning until 6 because I couldn't close my eyes watching the news unfolding in front of our eyes, and suddenly they reported that the Assad has fled and the rebel fighters are across Damascus. And I was calling my friends online, and we just were crying and laughing and being shocked all the time that is this actually happening around us. So it was a moment to be alive. It was a time to witness a new turning page in our history. And it's been insane because I left my country in November 2011. And the exact date is the 17th of November 2011. I have never been able to return. Every year I said that I would say to myself, the war would end next year. I'm going to return to see my family. I'll be again with my friends. I'm yearning for my own city. And this date never happened. This is my 14th Christmas away. Whenever I hear my friends saying like we're gonna go back home to Greece, to England, to Ukraine, to Lebanon, to Germany, to any other country, I feel like I wish I could return home, but we couldn't.
You come from Homs. I wonder if you could tell us what it used to look like and what's needed now to restore it to its former glory.
So Homs is the third largest city in the country after Damascus and Aleppo. It was a quiet and peaceful city, and it was very much known as the mother of the poor because the city was welcoming for all different people regardless of their income. And the city was also very diverse in terms of its people's backgrounds, in terms of religions and sects. So I remember when I went to the school, a mixed school, all my life I went to a mixed school, but it was a central school in the city. And when I was 14, 18, I got to know people from religions and sects I never heard of before. So somebody would tell me, I'm Murshidi, I'm Ismaili, I'm Sunni, I'm Shia, I'm Alawite, I'm Christian. Of course, I knew some of these sects, but some of the smaller groups that I never heard of. So it was really like a mosaic in terms of the diversity of the people. And I think this diversity has made the people. Now, one of the struggles that we had in the city is that very often these communities were divided spatially in the city, that even the neighborhoods were divided. So you would find an entire neighborhood that is from one community and lesser neighborhoods that they are of mixed communities. So this disconnected people from each other. And it was difficult for people to meet, except if they go to the university, for instance, or like to central markets where they can meet with each other. Now, the city has its unique character. It has a lot of black stones, so it's also known as the city of the black stones. And I wrote about this in my book Domicide that was published last year in Bloomsbury. It has some beautiful churches and historical mosques and churches, and it has like an old city that it's walled and it has different gates. So I would imagine now for the future reconstruction, which we have been waiting for many years, the priority would be to revive that history that has been destroyed at the time of the war. And I'm sure, like we have seen in any conflict, that architecture is no longer part of what is being termed as the collateral damage, but it is the deliberate target. So we have seen that in Ukraine, when Russia invaded a couple of years ago, we see how a building is deliberately destroyed, from a theater to school. But we have also seen that in Palestine, in many other countries. We see that today in Syria, that even bakery shops were deliberately targeted by the Syrian government and their allies, Russia, to make places uninhabitable. So now we are all starting a new phase. Everyone is thinking about reconstruction. Many people have been already looking at it at the time of war, and I feel it's an exciting moment to deconstruct the word reconstruction. What does it mean? And I can tell you more about it.
Well, what does it mean, and how would you build back better?
So reconstruction is this big and buzzword that many of us hear about when there is a conflict. And historically, we see that many cities have been destroyed, from Hiroshima and London to Berlin and Beirut. And every single city has been rebuilt again, even if like time was long after the end of the wars. But to look at reconstruction, we have to deconstruct it. It's about reconstructing memory, it's about rewriting history, it's about reuniting people, and it's about reviving the city and its historical monuments. There's often a fear and danger that I have written about a lot in the past, that big organizations such as the World Bank or UNESCO or some donors might be interested in funding specific projects, and they come with their own wants and their own priorities without asking the local people what they want and what they need. And this means that we might see millions of pounds, millions of dollars being spent on one single building that could be a bridge, a mosque, a church, that this international donor think is the solution for healing the community. And they might put all their efforts in one tiny dot in the city without thinking about the bigger picture. Another problem or struggle that we face is about the voice and rewriting narrative and whose voice is heard. For instance, today in Ukraine, we see many people who are, let's say, international companies in the UK or other countries who want to design the future of the city. But some Ukrainian architects and academics have said this is intellectual colonization. And that's the danger in many conflict zones, that even in Iraq it happened, and I'm afraid that hopefully it wouldn't happen in Syria, but maybe international donors would come and impose their own visions on the vulnerable communities who lost so much so far and tell them, you have to do this, you have to do that. So the priority now with the question of reconstruction is to centralize the voices of the local, to centralize the voice of the local charities that have been working slowly and in silence in the last 13 years, because even though the war was ongoing, but many charities were already working on the ground, trying to do their best, even with little resources. And I think they must be the priority and the prime partners for the future reconstruction.
And now from Monocle on Culture. The Japanese artist Takashi Murakami is one of the contemporary art's big beasts today. He's represented by the Gagosian Gallery and fetches massive sums at auctions. Ever since he was an art student in the 80s, Murakami was fascinated by the techniques and subject matter of traditional Japanese art and how it compares with the new, and that is very much the subject of his new show at Gagosian Grosvenor Hill Gallery, Japanese Art History à la Takashi Murakami. And you can expect the unique style of Murakami with cute manga-like smiley faces stamped all over the art, but is also showing the work of traditional Japanese art that he complements quite tenderly. Monocle's Robert Baum asked Murakami on the detail of his work involving the combination of Eastern and Western influences.
I love the sci-fi movie. So recently I saw the Netflix Santi. It's Santi, right? The Chinese.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sci-fi and Interstellar. So it's kind of the, the science is evolution. And then people can find out what is a black hole. And the black hole can traveling for that time also. So, it's, in my head is very childish, kind of the Star Wars head. But, when the Western people goes to the, worldwide to traveling in a ship, like a wood ship. So their in a head is maybe same fantasy we can share. So they believed in kind of infinity possibility. So and then they found each very unique culture and unique land, and looks like that like people want to find out to the new something frontier. So in my painting, anytime to theme is cross culture, trans culture. So you found maybe several ships, and you said a UFO also. So it looks like that. We don't want to making a bold, and then that means we want to watching to the another frontier stuff.
Yeah, I think this exhibition, this new body of work, Murakami-san, certainly takes us on a wild ride. And I wanted to ask, it's very bold, it's very confident, the colours, the sizes of the screens as well. How far away is the stuff that we see on the walls here at Gagosian from your original ideas, your original sketches for these works?
This 2 years, me and my team try to using for the AI image and language and sound. So sometime when I making for the board to making for the drawing, we are asking for the AI and then making for the very strange shape of the drawings. And then we print out and then cut by my hand and the collage and the scanning and then again for the asking for AI. So that process sometimes success, sometimes bold. So this show the several pieces the kind of this process goes through. So for example, Rakugaizu is a Kyoto city landscape paintings. That painting original thing is a lot of scratch, and then cannot see the clearly to the images, and then we have to prepare for the more clear images. At that moment, so we asking for the AI. So please make it for the more clear.
Yeah. And the use of AI is interesting because there is something about translation of words and instructions, commands into an AI, and you get what you get out the other end might not be exactly what you imagined. How close was the end result to your original instructions to the AI?
Completely different. Completely different. But this is can escape from the board. So every day I am, sitting and making a drawing and choosing for the color. That process I had been over 30 years. I almost bored. But asking for AI and the stupid images, this can making for laughing, with my assistant. This is, very misunderstanding, mistranslation thing.
Yeah.
But, same time to the, can making for the brainwash, so very freshy. So, AI is, good help. Looks like a, stupid friend.
Yeah. And Kyoto is such a city of detail in the 16th century and now it's a city that's a joy to get lost in. Is that the idea of that huge work? That it is an artwork to get lost in, that it is impossible to really discover all of the alleyways, look at all the faces, to really touch every part of the city? Is it a good painting to get lost in?
Oh, this is a good point you found. Yes, it is. Because our team is starting the drawings. So every day we are wondering for where it is. Yeah. Because we're doing for the over 30 people to making for the copying for the drawings. Right. So like 2 people is a director, but sometimes two people is, kind of take a rest. Then no one to direct in a studio. That means so it looks like a maze.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly the real maze we came.
And we are back with the curator. And we head back to the topic of Syria. As Syrians celebrate Assad's fall, Israel is striking targets across the country. Andrew Muller explains why.
The fall of President Bashar al-Assad of Syria and the end of more than half a century of his family's miserable misrule of the country is, in and of itself, unalloyed good news. Syria's people are abundantly entitled to whatever transports of joy and hope they are presently exulting in. They have waited long and suffered much for this moment. A moment might, however, be all they get. To consider the state of play in Syria right now is to contemplate a board and/or arena, choose your own preferred metaphor, upon which many players, internal and external, are all at once playing games of varying subtlety, from chess to rollerball. This Saturday's episode of The Foreign Desk will take a broad view of the probable causes and possible consequences of the astonishing events of the last week or so, midday UK time or wherever fine podcasts are downloaded after that. This explainer, meanwhile, will consider the response, as we understand it so far, of one very interested party, Syria's neighbour and longtime antagonist, Israel. Israel has, advertently or otherwise, played a significant role in enabling Syria's revolution. Israel's recent decapitation of the Lebanese militia Hezbollah, which had long protected Assad at Iran's behest, helped make the rebels' advance to Damascus militarily feasible. It appears, however, that Israel is not going to sit around anticipating the gratitude of whoever ends up running the country next door. In recent days, Israel has taken steps in keeping with its characteristically uncompromising approach to potential threats from its Arab neighbours, or, as Israel's critics might well have it, made typically opportunistic manoeuvres to help itself to its Arab neighbours. Even as Syria's long-suffering people celebrated the overthrow of their tyrant, the Israeli Air Force was striking targets across Syria, including inside Damascus. Israeli tanks also rolled into the demilitarized buffer zone in Syrian-controlled territory on the eastern side of the Golan Heights, of which more presently, and Israeli troops seized abandoned Syrian positions on Mount Hermon and in Quneitra province, both on Syrian territory.
We gave the Israeli army the order.
In a statement likely to have prompted an amount of mirthless laughter across the Arab world, Israel insisted that this move was temporary.
This is a temporary defensive position.
Though Israel is entitled to observe that this deployment was in part by way of assistance to a UN post on Syrian territory which had come under attack from renegades unknown. Israel's recent strikes are very far from the first such raids on Syria. Israel has hit Syria pretty frequently over the last decade and change, mostly in efforts to interdict supply lines from Iran to Hezbollah and or disrupt Iranian and Hezbollah activities inside Syria. And among the targets in this latest onslaught was a Hezbollah convoy of 150 vehicles attempting to reach Lebanon. These latest raids are, however, unusual in their intensity. Israel has delivered hundreds of strikes this week by sea as well as by air, in what appears an attempt to demolish Syria's entire arsenal of military kit, more or less, before Syria's next rulers, or whoever else might fancy an army, navy or air force, can get their hands on it and think about pointing it in Israel's direction. Israel's Defense Minister, Israel Katz, said Israel had acted to, quote, destroy strategic capabilities that threaten the state of Israel. The shenanigans on the Golan Heights require a brief blurt of historical context. The Golan Heights are a rugged plateau overlooking northern Israel and the Sea of Galilee. Before the Six-Day War in 1967, they were festooned with Syrian military positions and a cause of considerable concern to Israel. From Israel's foundation in 1948 onwards, Syrian artillery on the Golan Heights regularly shelled Israeli towns and farms below. During the Six-Day War, Israel took the Golan Heights, enabled partly by the endeavours of Eli Cohen, the Mossad agent who had infiltrated Syria's defence establishment during the 1960s. Before being exposed and executed in 1965, Cohen had encouraged Syria's military to shelter their troops on the Golan with clumps of Australian eucalyptus trees. When war began, Israel's pilots knew what to aim at. Israel held the Golan Heights during the Yom Kippur War of 1973, and if the intention had ever been to bargain them with Syria in exchange for peace, the strategic value of the heights eventually won out. Israel annexed them in 1981. Nobody else has ever recognized Israeli sovereignty over the heights except the only country which really matters to Israel, the United States, though not until 2019. This week, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, clearly attempting to forestall whoever ends up running Syria getting any ideas, said the Golan Heights would remain part of Israel for eternity. As to why Israel has hit Syria this hard this week, there are some excitable social media analysts fervently insisting that Netanyahu has staged the assault to keep his court appearance out of the newspapers. He is in the dock charged with a picturesque array of corruption offences which could yet land him in the clink. But Israel's preemptive destruction of Syria's military is entirely in keeping with the defensive doctrine which has guided Israel since its foundation in 1948, and Syria was one of the Arab countries which attempted to throttle the Jewish state at birth. Israel has always responded and will likely always respond with disproportionate severity to any threat, actual or anticipated. Please bear in mind at this point that an explainer of the motives is not necessarily an endorsement of the methods. This week's raids are Israel's message to Syria's next rulers, whoever they turn out to be, and it's the same message it always is. Don't mess with us. There is, however, decades of evidence to the effect that it is not being clearly heard. For Monocle Radio, I'm Andrew Muller.
And also this week I had the pleasure to speak with Austrian singer Sofie Royer about her new album Young Girl Forever. The electropop record paints the contradictions of being a female artist today.
My mother's Austrian, my father's Iranian, and they were both engineers, and that's why I was born in Palo Alto, California, because they were working for Apple at the time. Yeah, it's fun.
And, well, let's talk about your new album, which I think is fantastic. So it was inspired by a book called Preliminary Materials for the Theory of a Young Girl. Mm-hmm. So tell us what made you connect to that piece of work, so much so that you even titled your album with it.
So I had finished the record earlier this year, between the period of, I want to say, January and March, before we got to the mixing of the record. Parallel to that, I was on tour as the opening act for my friend Louis Hoffman. So we were touring France and Spain, a little bit of Germany. And I had been recommended the book for the Xth time. And so I decided to read it. I decided to finally give it a read. There's another really great zine by Tikkun, the collective, called Instruction Manual for a Civil War. I'd read that. I loved it. I thought it was very funny. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to give this text a try. And it, I think, was especially refreshing for me to read, just having kind of come off being in the last semester of my own studies in philosophy and psychology and English. So I was forced to kind of read a lot of theory. I didn't have too much time to spend reading belletristic or generally kind of more left field books. I do love verso books and their sale, and there's like a staple of like, I don't know, a few books that I'd been meaning to read and never got around to. And so when it came to me being on tour, I kind of had the book on my phone. I had like a PDF of the book on my phone. And the way it's written, I don't know if any of the listeners have seen it, but there's almost kind of these very quick phrases written in different fonts as kind of these pop statements on, let's say, the young girl is a commodity or the young girl is a good in consumer society. And I thought that was very interesting and very funny. And yeah, obviously ended up finding parallels to our own reality, my own existence, as well as just generally the society and structure that we live in. It's the same if you read like an Irving Joffman or a Pierre Bourdieu. You're like, oh, this is so universally applicable and still very relevant for today's day and age.
And I was very curious about the album, so the idea of the young girl as well. Is there something about living permanently in this state of youth as well?
Well, so the interesting thing about the young girl, it's not, if you read the book, it's not so much actually about like a female girl, and it's not so much about her necessarily being young. It's kind of just like this is a placeholder figure. And I do get asked a lot in interviews kind of to like relate it back to something very temporal, but I don't necessarily think that's what the book stands for or is supposed to stand for. But that's also my interpretation of it.
Oh, of course. Let's talk about some of the music as well. As I said, I'm a big fan. We play some of the songs here on Monocle Radio. For example, one of my favorites, and it is a single as well, I Forget I'm So Young. It's so beautiful, and of course, not even the lyrics, the beats, there's something quite nostalgic about it as well. What do you have to say about this song? I wonder what was the process for that song in particular?
Well, this song was kind of a song in between other songs on the record. I had my bassist in the studio that day, Marcus Windisch, who, I don't know if anybody's listening, but he's amazingly talented. He was playing this little riff, and I was like, oh, that needs to be its own song. And that's kind of how that song happened. I think I wrote to it in like 5 to 10 minutes. It's really like one of those songs that's like, that happened very fast. And we maybe spent the most time on it, my sound engineer and I, on like making that drop with the church bells. That was maybe the most stressful thing. But like the keys I played super fast, the bass line was recorded super quickly, the little guitar licks very fast. So there's really not a lot of overthinking going on with that song, which is maybe what makes it so catchy.
It is very catchy. And it's funny, and the whole album, I would say, has a very kind of danceable mood to it. Would you agree more, perhaps, than your first two albums, which I'm not saying they were not danceable.
No, you're totally right.
This is party album in a way.
It's totally right. I got tired of playing songs on stage that were morbid, and I wanted to do something a little more dauntless and lighthearted, and for me to have more fun when I'm playing live.
UBS has over 900 investment analysts from over 100 different countries.
Over 900 of the sharpest minds and freshest thinkers in the world of finance today.
To find out how we could help you,
contact us at ubs.com.
We're back with The Curator, a weekly highlight show here on Monocle Radio, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Over 3/4 of Finland's land area is covered with forests, and the forestry industry has been one of the country's economic foundations. This knowledge of wood as a material, combined with world-class scientific institutions such as the VTT and the Aalto University, has in recent years translated into a wealth of biomaterial innovations. One of the most promising biomaterial companies to emerge out of Finland is Sulapak, whose innovative wood-based material has the potential to replace plastics in industries ranging from cosmetics to food. Monocle's Helsinki correspondent Petri Burtsov met up with Sulapak's founder Sofie Royer to discuss the company's outlook and potential.
Everyone knows that plastics are a problem. According to the United Nations Environment Programme, up to 23 million tons of plastic waste leaks into aquatic ecosystems every year, polluting our lakes, rivers, and the seas. But replacing them with more environmentally friendly materials is a challenge. Plastic packaging is durable and water resistant, easy to mold into different shapes and cheap to produce. This is where the Finnish biomaterial innovation Sulapak comes in, as the company's founder Sofie Royer explains.
So we founded Sulapak in 2016 because all us founders, we wanted to utilize our biomaterial expertise to solve something which is close to our hearts, and that was the global plastic waste problem. So we created this Sulapak material innovation that has almost all the benefits of plastic without having the microplastic pollution challenge and the plastic waste problem. So these materials are fully recyclable, bio-based, biodegradable, and they can be utilized in the same machines as traditional plastics.
And you've actually brought some samples of the material, and we're looking at them now, and they come in all shapes and sizes. Some of it, for example, this cosmetics container that I'm holding here, you can see that it's not traditional plastic. You can sort of see are these wooden chips that you see inside?
Yes, indeed, they are the wooden chips. So Sulapak materials, they are made from plant-based biopolymers, and then we combine them with, for instance, waste wood chips and also naturally occurring clay minerals.
Sulapak started in the cosmetics industry and has worked with brands such as Chanel and Shiseido, the first of which has also invested into Sulapak. As the company has expanded, it has acquired clients in industries such as food services. One of its most recent projects is producing a plastic-like cup for the American fast food chain Burger King. The cups are 100% biodegradable and can be washed around 200 times.
We started with cosmetic packaging, and that is still the cornerstone of our business. Obviously, our materials can be utilized in various applications. We have, for instance, brought these cutlery and straws, so having products in the food service area. The latest innovation being in the thermoforming area. So you can make these trays, you can make cups, you can make packaging from thermoforming. So really replacing conventional plastic is as many applications as possible.
Jaime, who holds a PhD in biomaterials and worked as a researcher and adjunct professor before launching Sulapak in 2016, already has her eyes set on a new venture.
In addition to Sulapak, I actually have myself founded a new company called Kurai, and that is looking the same global plastic waste problem from the data and digitalization perspective. So in essence, we are building a platform to collect, manage and share data, so help companies to make more sustainable products using digitalized product data.
And we are back, set against the stunning backdrop of the Scottish Highlands and surrounded by Cairngorm reindeer. One of the most festive hotels to spend your Christmas is the Five Arms in Braemar. Inside you can raise a dram at the whiskey bar, Bertie's, inspired by Queen Victoria's eldest son, King Edward VII, known as Bertie, a famously extravagant bon viveur. Monocle Radio's Tom Webb caught up with Matthew Morrison, whiskey specialist at the Five Arms, to raise a dram and taste what's on offer.
Our whiskey bar that we have at the Five Arms, which is where I personally work, we've got a range of whiskies from entry-level whiskies for everyday drinkers all the way up to your top-end, super rare, one-of-a-kind bottles of whiskey that are extremely hard to buy.
And how linked is that with the Five Arms? Is it your own whiskey?
So we have our own whiskey as well. This is the Five Farms blend, and it's limited bottling that we do. We work with a company called Adelphi, and we have whiskies from all over Scotland, single malts, blended together in this one-off blend, which is extremely easy drinking, perfect for the beginners and the aficionados.
Now, when I hear the word blend, I think, oh gosh, that must be a cheap whiskey. This is not such a blend.
No, blends have got a bit of a bad reputation in the world of whiskey, which is, historically has been fairly earned, but in the modern age we're starting to see this new age of blended whiskies which are coming through at a much higher quality and are putting a much more impressive whiskies into that blend, which is resulting in a much cleaner and smoother spirit and just a higher quality product all around. And yes, the price point isn't always as high, but if you can get the high quality with the slightly lower price point, what's wrong there?
Well, let's talk about that exact bottle now, because I'm looking at it. It's got your establishment printed on the front. It's a fine looking bottle. If you could pour me, do we call it a dram?
We do call it a dram.
If you could pour me a dram close to the mic while I ask this question to you. There we go. How about that? And then maybe we can get into some of the smells and the flavours. That's a very large dram.
It's a proper dram.
It is. Okay, so I'm going to take a big whiff and you can tell me what I'm going to be smelling as we do it right now.
So on the nose, you're going to get this kind of very subtle, almost peppery kind of style of smoke. The main component of this is Ardnamurchan, American, a very small distillery in the West Coast, which is known for its kind of smoky, salty, almost fishy notes. And it's the main component in this. So you're going to get that kind of slight saltiness as well. It's like you're walking down the beach in a cold December in Scotland.
And listeners, you need to be informed that the word fish was mentioned. I can tell you there is a slight scent, but it is incorporated beautifully in the whiskey. It's not fishy at all.
It's more like a seaweed, kind of maritime, kind of like you're at the beach. It's that kind of fresh air as the salt waves roll in.
It is, and I'm actually going to take a wee sip, as they say in Scotland, and then maybe you can tell me what is going to be dancing on my palate as I give it a go.
So you've got that kind of smooth caramel which kind of hits you up first.
It hits hard, yeah.
It's at 46%, so it's got this kind of nice creamy caramel notes, but the thing that I love about this whiskey the most is its big, bright tropical fruits. Kind of comes in the mid-palate and kind of reaches into that smoke on the end, and it's this almost kind of charred pineapple, burnt mangoes, but again that peppery kind of notes coming through. It's quite fresh, it's quite bright, and I absolutely love this one.
And you're using very strong language for flavours. However, as you mentioned at the beginning, this is very drinkable.
Yes. Quaffable is the word I would use to describe it.
Forgive me. And you're telling me how I should be sort of using my language, because you are essentially a whiskey sommelier. How does that work?
So we don't tend to use menus at the Five Farms. If we know our products well enough, you don't need menus. We can make the recommendations based on your own kind of flavour preferences. Whiskey is very much different to wine in terms of the language and the lexicon. With wine, you have to use the set terms: whetstone, minerality, barnyard. With whiskey, there's no limits. There's no words you can't use. So we have whiskies in the bar that we describe as diesel fried mango, as a kind of fresh black bags. You say what you smell, you say what you taste, and the more adventurous with the tasting notes, the more memorable the whiskey I find is.
And that is very memorable because it's still lingering in my palate. Can you give us a sense of what it's like for a consumer, a guest, a visitor, a drinker of yours entering the Five Farms?
It can be overwhelming. We have 16,000 pieces of art in the hotel, including 2 Picassos, 2 Bruegels, some Hans Baumers, some Man Rays. There's a lot of taxidermy as well. If you like clean, kind of neutral spaces, you might not find it the easiest. But if you like something that's exciting, that's unique, one of a kind, it's absolutely perfect. It's so much colour and so much history. It's a Victorian-style building. All the furniture is old antiques that we've managed to find through antique auctions. And it's a wonder for the senses, whether that be the smell, the taste, the sight, everything. It's an experience.
And what is the Christmas experience?
The Christmas experience is magical. We've had for 14 years in a row now a white Christmas up in Braemar. It's the coldest village in the UK, so not always snow on the ground, but at least snow in the air for the last few Christmases. And the decorations at the hotel, they go all out. I think you can see it from space. We've got so many lights, including our big flying stag leaping off the top of the building. It lit up. It's certainly an experience that you won't believe it until you see it.
Well, I'm going to do a cheers to that. Now, do we say cheers? What do we say?
We say Solange.
Solange.
So you raise your glass up and you tap the table once, for the friends who are here and for the friends who are no more.
You are listening to The Curator, a weekly highlight show here on Monocle Radio. And now it's time for a highlight of the stack. We speak with the team behind the Metrograph, a new print publication for New York cinema, Metrograph.
The Metrograph is a beloved, iconic Manhattan theatre where we play classics, new releases, archival prints. It's started in 2016 and it's a really special place. I'm very happy to work here. You get to come on the weekend and contrary to some of the narratives about what's going on in cinema, you walk in, it's a beautiful theatre and it's absolutely filled with all sort of young people, old people, people from all sorts of backgrounds, discovering cinema, revisiting movies they love. And then we also have a beautiful bookstore, we have a bar and a restaurant. So people come and sort of hang out and stay and really feel part of a community here. And so the magazine is just a really natural extension of that.
Nick, I wonder, how was the process to say, hey, we actually need a magazine for it? Did it make sense? Was that one of those ideas that are like, oh my God, why haven't we done this before? Or were you a bit cautious? I wonder, tell me about the early days when you decided to launch the title.
I think it's something that had been kicked around for quite a while. And as over the course of the last couple of years, we expanded editorial activity at Metrograph on the journal section of the website and started putting together a more and more robust team. It was a kind of logical next step, and also because, you know, there's a bit of a hole in the marketplace right now with so many of the more, let's say, serious-minded or elevated film magazines having gone under. And I think part of the impetus was wanting to reverse that trend or push back against that trend a little bit. So, you know, I can't claim to be the main driver, mover, and shaker on any of this, but was pleased to be able to lend a hand in some way.
And about, as Nick was saying, there was perhaps a gap in the film press when it comes to magazines as well. And I think, I don't know in the US if it's similar to the UK as well, where the newspapers, the dailies, they've increased their coverage of cinema, and maybe this has also affected magazines. But there's definitely a space for a title like yours for really the cinema fans, not necessarily just guided by new releases or press releases as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of what Metrograph is about is sort of about a lot of movies beyond just that, you know, PR junket cycle, the movies that we come back to and return to many times again and again, and that, you know, are a meaningful part of all our lives. And the magazine is, a natural extension of that idea where from every part of it, you know, if you think of the way that a lot of readers engage with film writing online, on, you know, newspapers disappearing, blogs. It's a very sort of transient, ephemeral experience where what we wanted to really create with the print magazine is something timeless, enduring, lasting, that plays an important part in people's lives. The magazine has been really beautifully designed. We're really lucky to work with the firm Pentagram, and every element of it. The paper is, you know, beautiful Italian paper. We're using wonderful printers. It's full of incredible, like, original art. It's a product in the end that, you know, you want to like gift a friend, you want to keep on your shelf forever, you want it to share it with people and be part of your life. So I think print is a medium that really conveys those pleasures and extends that experience and reinforces cinema as a crucial and sort of communal element of all our lives and the reason that we keep coming back to it.
And in a way, the magazine as well, it's a kind of an expansion of the brand. Of course, the cinema is very much associated with New York, but I believe the idea is for the magazine, you know, to be sold in other places, perhaps even here in London as well, which I know that's where the magazine is being printed. So was that the idea? It's an expansion of the brand as well, right?
It is, and yeah, it's very much for an international audience. It's sort of like taking that experience of stepping into the Metrograph Theatre, and for those who can't be in Manhattan, getting a taste of that anywhere around the world. And yeah, the magazine, we have an international distributor, so it should be in, select boutique bookstores all around the world. If you are a bookseller and interested, please get in touch. It's very important to us that a lot of people have access to it, and that extends, a lot of the contributors, the writers, the visual artists are not just Americans, but they're people, filmmakers, I should also say, of course. This is very much a global celebration.
And finally, on the curator, if you're thinking of a continental excursion this winter, one place to head for culinary delights is Krakow. This picturesque city is at its best when covered in a thick blanket of snow, and what better way to warm up than with a comforting plate of traditional pierogis? Monocle's Flynn Simons shows us his favorite spots in the city.
Krakow is one of Poland's most culturally rich cities. Its UNESCO-listed old town surrounds you with medieval architecture and is a joy to walk through both day and night. The streets that shoot off the square play host to a variety of cozy traditional restaurants serving Polish cuisine, as well as exciting modern eateries should you desire something a bit more familiar at an attractive Eastern European rate. Foodie or not, Poland offers a lively and imaginative tour for your taste buds. From cheesy carb-packed street food to a very affordable and delicious Italian restaurant that we'll get to later, there's sure to be something to satiate your hunger in Krakow. Our first official morning in Krakow, we headed to Citat Cafe, a cozy cafe filled with books and about a 20-minute walk from the old town. There was only one thing we wanted, a traditional Polish breakfast. Our expectations rose due to a number of people in the cafe, and even though we were told we would take about half an hour to 45 minutes to get our food, we thought that must mean the food was pretty damn good. If you aren't familiar with Polish breakfast, which I wasn't, the main difference from an English breakfast is the inclusion of cheese, both cottage cheese and sliced Gouda. I was skeptical at first, but the cottage cheese combined with the savoury scrambled eggs provided a nice, tangy contrast. Salad was another surprise, but it was a pleasant change to get some greens with breakfast, especially with the carbs we would have later in the day. Brick and cream-coloured facades looked like stencils against the crisp autumn sky as we walked through the old town square. The proud clock towers and steeples stood tall above us as we headed to try another Polish delicacy, pierogi. These boiled dumplings, filled with pork or a variety of vegetarian options, make for the perfect snack between breakfast and lunch. They arrived steaming hot, drizzled in golden butter. Nothing better to warm up your belly on a cold day. I recommend taking your hand-warming carton of pierogi and sitting among the fallen leaves in one of Krakow's many parks, where it feels like you're in an autumn postcard. The vendor we opted for was Przystanek Pierogania, which was yummy and quick, but pierogis are a dime a dozen in Krakow. And if you walk a few steps around the old town, you won't have trouble finding any. After warming your belly and kicking up leaves, get ready for a zapiekanka, a cheese-covered slice of bread, cut lengthwise and topped with everything from sausage to jalapenos, based on your preference. First, we tried the traditional version, with cheese, chives and mushrooms topped with Polish ketchup. Let me just say, these were a handful, or perhaps more accurately, 2 handsful. Even with the half-size portion, we had to guide them into our mouths with caution, as the generous toppings often fell off along the way. These make a great late-night snack option after a few cheap Polish beers, because there's nothing like hot carbs to satisfy the alcohol-fueled appetite. Head to Krakow's top square, or Plac Nowy, to find a huge variety of vendors to choose from. Don't worry about which window to go to first, you'll probably get the urge to try a couple more. Now, even if that tasty zapiekanka is threatening the integrity of the buttons on your shirt, you'll have to imagine a bit of room in your stomach for a paczki, a Polish donut. These are traditional pastries that are typically enjoyed on Tłusty Czwartek, Or Fat Thursday, the Thursday before Lent. Though they are popular year-round, these can be found everywhere in Krakow, and if you didn't feel like one before, you certainly will after walking past the window of these stores. The tempting fillings combined with the glazed, powdered toppings is enough to persuade even the most satisfied appetite to have just one bite. Of course, we sampled the kiwi and pineapple, my personal favourite, but the flavours were plentiful, ranging from your staples like chocolate and custard to slightly more uncommon options like rose hip jam and rhubarb. So whatever your preference, they'll be hard to resist. After having walked through the old town and tried Poland's culinary delights, your mind is probably starting to drift towards one of Eastern Europe's biggest draws, cheap beer. And yes, Poland has plenty of it, and plenty of exciting bars to wash them back with. If you're in the mood for a bit of fun before dinner, you're best to head to the Cosmic Games pub, where you'll get unlimited access for as long as you like to games like air hockey, foosball and beer pong for only 8 quid. Or if you want something more low-key, try Retro, a cocktail bar with old-school PlayStation and Nintendo games on offer. For a late-night option, you could go with Alchemia, a cocktail bar that also has a live music venue downstairs, with gigs happening almost every night. Once we had finished warming up for dinner, we headed to one of Krakow's most popular restaurants, Mamma Mia. I know what you're thinking, that doesn't sound Polish, and it's not. But after a day filled with Polish delights, why not take advantage of the high-quality Italian food at Polish prices? For our meal, we ordered a goat's cheese pizza and seafood pasta, both of which were incredible, especially after we saw the bill. Do bear in mind this place is very popular, so you will have to book in advance by a day or two. Or just be prepared to eat at a slightly earlier time. I'll wrap things up with both the last item on the menu, but also the greatest. Polish sausage from a trailer on the side of the road. Sausages from the Blue Nisa is a 2-man business run by 2 former tradesmen who thought, hey, maybe we should just start selling sausages. And thank God they did. This was by far the best food we had. The sausages had a crispy and charred skin, and once combined with the tangy mustard, was an absolute flavour explosion. Not to mention the fresh bread that also came as an add-on. If you eat one thing in Krakow, make sure it's this. Important to note that it only opens after 8 every evening, so a good option for refueling before you hit the pubs. And there you have it, a food-filled day in Krakow, a city with food culture that's as proud and magnificent as the medieval towers that watch over you in the square. For Monocle Radio, I'm Flynn Simons.
And that's all we've got time for this week's edition of The Curator. The show was produced by David Stevens and presented by me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Join us again next week, and thank you for listening.